Now, Jane, I want to ask you, did there come a time in your life when you met someone named Jeffrey Epstein? Answer yes. What year was that? Answer 1994. Did there come a time in your life when you had sexual contact with Jeffrey Epstein? Answer yes. How old were you when that first happened? Answer 14 years old. Donald Trump was friends with Jeffrey Epstein that day, that very day in 1994 when Jeffrey Epstein raped that 14-year-old girl. That testimony was given under oath in the criminal trial of Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirator in sex trafficking, Ghislaine Maxwell. In 2002, Donald Trump said he was friends with Jeffrey Epstein for 15 years. That means their friendship began in and around 1987, 7 years before Jeffrey Epstein raped the 14-year-old girl whose testimony you just heard. And during that time, when Jeffrey Epstein was raping children, Donald Trump publicly called Jeffrey Epstein a terrific guy. That victim, whose testimony you just heard, was asked if Jeffrey Epstein raped her more than once. Question: did that happen once or more than once when you were 14 years old? Answer: more than once. Question: was there ever anyone else in the room with you when you had sexual contact with Jeffrey Epstein when you were 14 years old? Answer: yes. Question: who was most frequently in the room when you had sexual contact with Jeffrey Epstein when you were 14 years old? Answer: Ghislaine Maxwell. The only thing Donald Trump has ever said about Ghislaine Maxwell since she was convicted of sex trafficking and abusing that girl was, "I wish her well." That's the only sentiment Donald Trump has ever expressed about Ghislaine Maxwell after she was convicted of co-conspiring with child rapist Jeffrey Epstein. I wish her well. Ghislaine Maxwell is serving a 20-year sentence tonight in federal prison, and she knows that the President of the United States, who wishes her well, also has the power to release her from prison immediately. Donald Trump can commute her sentence. Donald Trump can pardon her. Donald Trump can just say she's been punished enough. And tonight, Donald Trump's criminal defense lawyer is using the Trump method of going public when possibly trying to subvert the law. Donald Trump's last criminal defense lawyer, Todd Blanche, who is now the Deputy Attorney General, announced on Twitter that he is in talks with Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyer, and he said, "I intend to meet with her soon, and no good can possibly come from that meeting." Todd Blanche's tweet actually says, for the first time, the Department of Justice is reaching out to Ghislaine Maxwell to ask, "What do you know?" At Attorney General Pam Bondi's direction, I've contacted her counsel. I intend to meet with her soon. No one is above the law and no lead is off limits. Now, Todd Blanche is lying so obviously because we know that any lead on Donald Trump is off limits. We know that about the Trump Justice Department, and we know that about Todd Blanche, Donald Trump's criminal defense lawyer. Todd Blanche has already contacted Ghislaine Maxwell's criminal defense lawyer. And the only reason for Ghislaine Maxwell's criminal defense attorney to talk to Todd Blanche is to get her out of prison. Any criminal defense lawyer would be able to tell Ghislaine Maxwell exactly what she has to say to get out of prison. She has to say Donald Trump knew nothing about it. Donald Trump knew nothing about what we were doing to those girls. And it would be very helpful to Donald Trump if Ghislaine Maxwell was also willing to say something incriminating about other prominent people who knew Jeffrey Epstein, like maybe Bill Clinton. And Todd Blanche is exactly who Donald Trump would send to Ghislaine Maxwell's criminal defense lawyer to offer a get-out-of-jail deal if that's what they are up to. Of course, Ghislaine Maxwell had the chance to tell the Justice Department everything she knew. And she refused to do that. She refused to say a word to federal prosecutors. She refused to cooperate with the Justice Department when the Justice Department would have been happy to accept truthful testimony from her about Jeffrey Epstein when he was still alive. Ghislaine Maxwell and her criminal defense lawyer now know they are dealing with the most corrupt Department of Justice in American history, and the only incentive that Ghislaine Maxwell and her lawyer have to speak to Todd Blanche is to give Todd Blanche the magic words that he can pass on to Donald Trump to get Ghislaine Maxwell out of prison. Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted by a jury in Manhattan, and she is currently appealing her case. Most appeals of criminal convictions don't have a chance of succeeding, and most lawyers know that. It is legally and procedurally scandalous that Todd Blanche, of all people, has contacted Ghislaine Maxwell's criminal defense lawyer and intends to meet with her. And Todd Blanche knows how scandalous that is, which is why, in Trumpian fashion, he has made it public. Donald Trump makes public announcements about his intended illegal conduct all the time, including every single time he announces that he is going to illegally change a tariff. That's the Trump method. If he says it publicly, it can't possibly be scandalous. And the Washington Press Corps mostly falls for that. The bias of the Washington Press Corps is that all scandals have to be dug out of the deep darkness of the insides of some corrupt institution like the Trump White House or the Trump Justice Department. The most scandalous behavior during the first Trump presidency occurred behind closed doors and was dug up by congressional investigators in the January 6th committee and by enterprising, resourceful reporters, but not anymore. They go public with it on Team Trump with the belief that no one will recognize just how outrageous it is that they are doing what they are confessing to do in tweets. That witness, whose testimony you just heard was asked, who Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell talked about when they talked about their friends, and the first name, the very first name that that witness gave was Donald Trump. And so that means the name Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. We know it from that testimony. Has to be in the Epstein files just for that point, because that would have come up in investigative discussions with the FBI, and they would have put that in the files. The first name, a 14-year-old girl listening to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell talk about their friends, and the very first name she mentions that she heard was Donald Trump. Question: what names do you recall them mentioning to you when they would tell you about their social circle? Answer: Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Mike Wallace, people at some that I didn't know. Donald Trump and his supporters have always suggested that the real dirt of the Epstein investigation would get all over Bill Clinton. And now, tonight, we have very strong reason to believe that that is not true, because Donald Trump is in control of the release of the Epstein files, and everything the Epstein files says about Bill Clinton, Donald Trump could release all that. And Donald Trump is refusing to release those files. Donald Trump, by tonight, must also know, having been briefed by his former criminal defense lawyer, Todd Blanche, everything that the Epstein files say about Donald Trump. And Donald Trump has decided those files can never come out. Never. No matter what they might say about Bill Clinton. That witness whose testimony you just heard was asked about a tragedy that her family suffered the year before she met Jeffrey Epstein. Question: directing your attention to the fall of 1993, what happened in your family at that time? Answer: my father died of leukemia. Question: what was your home life like after your father passed away? Answer: it was not great. My father's employer had canceled his health insurance without him knowing and ended up in the hospital and died very suddenly. And basically my family went into complete bankruptcy and lost everything, and we had to move out of our home. Question. You testified that before he passed away, your father was a composer. Were you involved in the arts growing up? Answer, yes. Question. Were your brothers involved in the arts? Answer, yes. Question. Did you continue being involved in the arts after your father passed away? Answer, yes. Question. Directing your attention to the summer of 1994, what did you do that summer? Answer, me and my two brothers, we went to camp for the first time. Interlochen Arts Camp. Question. What is Interlochen Arts Camp? Answer. It's a camp for children with all kinds of artistic abilities, music, musical theater, theater, orchestra. Question. When you arrived at camp that summer, how long had it been since your father passed away? Answer. So the end of October 93, so what is that, 9 months? Question. Did there come a time that summer at Interlochen Arts Camp when you met a man and a woman? Answer, yes. Question. Where were you when that happened? Answer, I was in the main campus area where all the students hung out during a break and where all the little cafes were and sort of the gift shop. And I was on a park bench or a picnic bench with my friends from camp and we were eating ice cream. Question, what do you remember happening next? Answer, well, we were sitting around and socializing and we see this tall, thin woman approaching us. Well, she was walking with a cute little Yorkie and the Yorkie came by us and we asked if we could pet the dog. Question, what happened then? Answer, we started chit-chatting, petted the dog, and the rest of my classmates had to go to class, and probably about a minute later, another man came and joined her. And the rest of my friends, my classmates left, and I was there by myself, and I sat on the bench, still eating my ice cream, and the man sat across from me. Question, did you have a conversation with that man and that woman? Answer, yes, I did. He seemed very interested to know what I thought about the camp, what my favorite classes were, what my least favorite classes, teachers, whatnot, what the experience was like, and proceeded to say that they were big benefactors of this camp and that they went there every summer and that they gave different kids scholarships. And so they wanted to really know what a student attending the camp, what their perspective was on it. Question, what, if anything else, did you discuss with them? Answer, well, they asked me where I was from, and I said I lived in Palm Beach, Florida, and the man said, what a coincidence, we live there too. What are your parents' names? Question, that man and that woman you had this conversation with, who were they? Answer, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Question, what was your impression of them at that point? Answer, they seemed very friendly. I thought they were a married couple. She was in 8th grade. She was in 8th grade when Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell together raped her. Donald Trump has never said, I wish her well, about that victim of Jeffrey Epstein or any victim of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Donald Trump reserves all of his sympathies, all of his good feelings in the Epstein-Maxwell child rape story for Ghislaine Maxwell and no one else. What is Todd Blanche going to say to Ghislaine Maxwell? Is he going to wish her well? Are there any other convicted criminal defendants in federal prison tonight around the country who did not testify at their trials who Todd Blanche wants to talk to about anything? Of course not. There's just one. The person who was there with Jeffrey Epstein committing the crimes at the very time that Donald Trump said Jeffrey Epstein is a terrific guy, at exactly that same time. We know that Ghislaine Maxwell has things to say about Donald Trump because the testimony at her criminal trial showed, as you just heard, that she talked about Donald Trump to 14-year-old girls before and after raping them. The in over his head Speaker of the House seemed to mock his own overbearing public religiosity today when he actually invoked Scripture on the side of continuing to keep the Epstein files secret, on the side of Donald Trump blocking the release of the investigative files of the child rapist who Donald Trump called a terrific guy. Our first guest tonight, Congressman Ro Khanna, has teamed up with Republican Congressman Thomas Massie to create a nightmare for Donald Trump and for the Speaker of the House. They've been planning to bring a discharge petition that will be signed by both Democrats and Republicans in the House that will force a vote in the House on releasing the Epstein files. Donald Trump has attacked Thomas Massie now more than he's attacked any other Republican. Here's what Donald Trump said when asked about his former criminal defense lawyer talking to Ghislaine Maxwell's criminal defense lawyer and trying to talk to Ghislaine Maxwell.
Mr. President, do you support the Justice Department seeking a new interview with Ghislaine Maxwell, and did you urge the Attorney General to seek one?
I don't know anything about it. They're going to what? Meet her?
They're going to, your Deputy Attorney General is reached out to Ghislaine Maxwell's attorney asking for a new interview.
Yeah, I don't know about it, but I think it's something that sounds appropriate to do, yeah.
Do you have any concern that your Deputy Attorney General, who's your former attorney, would be conducting the interview, given
No, I have no concern. He's a very talented person. He's very smart. I didn't know that they were going to do it. I don't really follow that too much.
He's such a bad liar. Pathological liars are terrible at lying because they don't actually know what their lying sounds like to sane people. I don't really follow that too much. Donald Trump actually said that about the Epstein files. Donald Trump says it sounds appropriate for his former criminal defense lawyer to be talking to Ghislaine Maxwell's criminal defense lawyer to get something from Ghislaine Maxwell in exchange for what from Donald Trump? Or Donald Trump's former criminal defense lawyer. What does he have to offer to Ghislaine Maxwell? No, nothing about that. Nothing about that sounds appropriate. Donald Trump has already hit Republican Thomas Massie as hard as he can. And Thomas Massie, for now, is still standing. This morning, Thomas Massie said this.
President's consultants have spent $1.8 million against me, and I got a new tweet last night, or a Truth Social last night, and clearly that was because I've done this Epstein file. Like, dogs don't bark at parked cars, right? This bill is moving. This is coming to a vote. We've got enough Republican co-sponsors of the bill, twice as many as we need right now, such that when they sign it, and every Democrat signs this, we're going to force a vote on it. It's not going away.
After Thomas Massie said that, the Speaker of the House decided to recess the House of Representatives for the rest of the summer to avoid Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna's discharge petition overwhelming the House of Representatives this week. And so Mike Johnson seems to have guaranteed that the House of Representatives will once again take its place as the battleground over the Epstein files in September. In Thomas Massie's words, it's not going away.